After 40 years of marriage, I turned 68 this year. Over the years, my life has grown quieter, simpler too. I no longer care about the cut of my clothes or whether my jewelry sparkles. I rarely even think about how to make my days feel more fulfilling. When I was young, I believed life was long, that I should pour every ounce of my time into my family. I thought once they no longer needed me, I'd finally get to enjoy the good life. But now I realize, it's not that they stopped needing me. Maybe I was never truly needed in the first place. This house is spotless, every corner and every piece of furniture meticulously maintained by my own hands. And yet standing here, all I feel is emptiness. The soft amber light from the ceiling glows over the carefully arranged details, casting a warmth that feels strangely hollow. This year's birthday feels different. My daughter Lauren has recently gained quite a following on social media. She's been creating a series of videos called The Ideal Family Life, always playing the role of the doting, thoughtful daughter, capturing heartwarming moments of familial love for the camera. She told me her viewers recently especially adore the loving daughter caring for her aging mom kind of content. So this time she decided to film a birthday celebration and make it the centerpiece of her channel. I woke up early Saturday morning to the clatter of pots and pans in the kitchen. That alone was unusual. Harold usually heads out for his morning run at this time, so the house is typically silent. Rubbing my temples, I stepped out of the bedroom and found my 7-year-old grandson Noah on the couch, eyes glued to his tablet while cartoon noises blared from the speakers. He didn't even notice me walk into the room. Drawn by the smell of spices, I walked into the kitchen to find Lauren and my son-in-law, Daniel, bustling around, completely absorbed in the food prep. Several dishes were already spread across the table. I managed to smile and asked, "Lauren, are we expecting guests today?" Without looking up, she kept chopping onions and laughed. "Mom, don't you remember? We're celebrating your birthday early. My followers are busy living their own lives over the weekend, so I'll post the video on Monday." Perfect timing. I hesitated for a second. My actual birthday is next Tuesday. Today wasn't it? But I figured maybe they were swamped with work and couldn't celebrate later. An early gathering wasn't the worst thing. Honestly, for a moment I even felt a little touched as long as they wished to celebrate with me. I walked over to the dining table and looked at the dishes they'd prepared. Sizzling roast meats, lobsters drenched in heavy spices, beef stewed in a fiery chili sauce. The only thing that seemed remotely light was a shrimp dish, buried under a thick coat of garlic butter. My smile froze in place. I gave birth to Lauren when I was 35, considered a late pregnancy even back then. Harold's an only child. From the start, his parents made it clear they were hoping for a boy. When Lauren was born, they remained polite, but there was always a quiet air of disappointment. Back then, I was physically exhausted after giving birth, but there was no proper care. No one seemed to care whether I was getting enough nutrition. Even the most basic medical attention felt like an afterthought. I still remember spending those days chewing stale bread and overly sweet can juice. My appetite tanked, and that's when my teeth started to weaken. By the time I turned 60, I had no choice but to wear a full set of dentures. A few years ago I heard dental implants had become more advanced. I considered getting them, but the cost held me back. Nearly $4,000 per tooth. It just didn't seem worth it. And what did Harold say at the time? "You really want to shove those metal pieces in your mouth? That's disgusting. Your teeth are messed up because you didn't take care of them. Look at me, I'm 2 years older and I can still eat anything." Lauren chimed in too. "Mom, dentures are so much more convenient at your age. Why waste money? Better to save it for Noah's college fund." Back then I convinced myself they had a point. Maybe, at my age, it really was better to think about the next generation. Eating softer food wasn't the end of the world. But these past few years, even the dentures have started to feel like a struggle. I have to nibble my way through a simple sandwich, bite by cautious bite. Looking at the heavy, spice-laden dishes on the table now, I suddenly felt a wave of disquiet. Was Lauren just being thoughtless, forgetting I can't chew half of this food? Or was it something worse? That no one in this family has ever truly cared about what I like to eat, or what I'm even able to eat. The table was already filled to the brim with food. Just as the clatter from the kitchen died down, Harold walked through the door, so precisely timed, it was as if the whole thing had been rehearsed. One hand in his jacket pocket, the other holding his gym water bottle, he carried with him the sharp, salty scent of a post-workout sweat. No flowers, No gifts. He stood at the door empty-handed. As I looked at his figure, a heavy weight sank in my chest. In that moment I felt foolish, ridiculously naive even. I'd actually held on to a shred of hope, like a child staring up at the sky after the fireworks have faded, still waiting for one more spark. Harold glanced at the table and patted Lauren on the shoulder with a grin. Wow, this is quite the setup. Your mom's really getting the royal treatment today. I don't remember you making this kind of fuss on my birthday. I forced a faint smile. He wasn't wrong. On his birthday, Lauren had taken the whole family to a high-end restaurant downtown, booked a private room, served an elegant dinner, paired with wine and candlelight. But my birthday? It had become content, another staged scene for her social media feed. I picked up my tea and took a small sip. The bitterness coated my tongue, sliding slowly down my throat and sinking deep into my chest. Noah was just about to reach for a piece of roast meat when Lauren quickly blocked his hand. Her voice was low but firm, leaving no room for discussion. Wait, Noah. I haven't started filming yet. Can you just hold off for a minute? And when the camera's on, remember to behave. Don't just dive into your food like last time. She adjusted the angle, fine-tuned the camera, then raised her glass with a smile so perfect it looked digitally filtered. Mom, today's your birthday. No matter how busy life gets, our family always comes together to celebrate. It's our tradition. I froze. Whatever small flicker of warmth I had left inside was instantly extinguished, her voice carrying the chill of glass shards. She raised her glass again and pulled Noah closer. The little boy looked visibly impatient but obediently recited the lines he'd clearly been coached on. Grandma, thank you for always taking care of me. I love you. Happy birthday. Wishing you good health and lots of happiness. I stared at this perfectly staged family scene, suddenly struck by how absurd it all was. Harold, seemingly touched, had misty eyes. He even placed a hand on my shoulder. Sylvia, in all these 40 years have I ever let you suffer? Look at us, our daughter, our grandson, they love you so much. We're a lucky family, aren't we? His words sent a cold shiver down my spine. My body stiffened as a memory from a few years ago came rushing back. They'd said the same thing back then, deciding out of nowhere to celebrate my birthday. But the table had been piled with food I couldn't even chew. I'd casually mentioned the dishes were too tough, and what I got in return was a round of scolding. Lauren put so much effort into cooking for you. That's her way of showing love. How could you be so ungrateful? Mom, I work all week. I don't have time to remember your food preferences. Even Daniel chimed in. Mom, Lauren really tried. Why are you always so hard to please? They were all so eager to talk about their sacrifices, their efforts, their exhaustion. But who ever remembered me? I knew Harold couldn't handle acidic food. Just a hint of vinegar would give him mouth ulcers. I knew Lauren was allergic to peaches, so I always peeled her fruit thoroughly. I knew Noah hated chicken skin. Every time I made soup, I'd carefully remove it from the drumsticks. I even remembered Daniel's dislike for cilantro. I'd leave it out entirely when I cooked. It's not that they can't remember what I like. It's that they never cared enough to try. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not from hurt but from clarity. A sharp, blinding clarity, not warm but cold and lucid. I didn't want to keep playing this charade of a happy family anymore. I set my teacup down. My hand, still holding the chopsticks, paused, then dropped them heavily onto the table. I looked Harold straight in the eye, my voice calm but laced with a blade-sharp edge. So Harold, where's the orange cake I asked you to pick up? The air around the dining table turned to stone. Even the background noise from Noah's cartoon felt jarring and out of place. Daniel was the first to react. He rushed over and hit pause on the camera, freezing everyone's smiles on the screen. Lauren frowned, clearly irritated, as if I had just ruined her carefully choreographed storyline. Harold blinked, then slipped back into his usual dismissive tone. Oh, the cake? I did go to pick it up this morning. But I ran into Ruby on the way. She said she'd been craving it, so I gave it to her. He said it like it was nothing, waving it off as if I were being unreasonable. It's just a cake. If it means that much to you, I'll go get you another one tomorrow. His tone was light, casual, like brushing off a petty complaint. But it hit me like a weight pressing down on my chest. I didn't let it slide. I stared at him and asked, word by word, it's my birthday today. Shouldn't there be a cake? That cake was the only thing I had actually asked for. I knew my teeth couldn't handle much and I didn't have any cravings, but I'd been thinking about that orange zest cake for a long time. Harold had promised, so casually, so easily, that he'd bring it home. And yet, even that tiny wish of mine couldn't compete with a throwaway comment from Ruby. Lauren jumped in, trying to smooth things over. Right, we can't have a birthday without a cake. It'll look better on camera too. The audience loves that kind of thing. I'll order one right now. She pulled out her phone and pretended to open the delivery app. I just stared at her, a cold laugh forming silently in my chest. She didn't care whether I wanted the cake. She cared about how the cake would look on camera. I turned back to Harold, my voice low and razor sharp. If Ruby wanted cake, couldn't she buy her own? Is she broke, or has she gotten so pathetic she's begging for handouts on the street? His face darkened instantly and the whole table tensed. Lauren, don't order anything, he said, his voice simmering with anger. Don't spoil her. She's 68. Does she really need to act like some teenager obsessing over a birthday cake? He dropped his chopsticks and looked at me, eyes full of disdain. Ruby's husband died, her kids aren't around, she's had a rough time. What's the harm in giving her a piece of cake? Sylvia, you're being ridiculous. Can't you hear how nasty you sound? I looked at him, his tone, his expression so familiar, so condescending. And not a trace of remorse. He went on, isn't this table full of food enough for you? Lauren and Daniel made an effort to come home and cook for you. And now you're throwing a tantrum? People would laugh if they saw how you're acting. Lauren's face shifted. All she'd wanted was a warm, sentimental video, but Harold's outburst made her look like an uncaring daughter. She spoke up, her voice laced with frustration. Mom, I took time off to come home and cook with you. If you didn't like the food, you could have just said so, but ruining everyone's mood like this, there's really no need. I looked at her and whatever warmth I had left inside turned to ice. I had always known deep down that they didn't truly care. But in this moment, it finally settled in, clear, cold, undeniable. In this house, my feelings, my needs, my wishes have never mattered. To them, a birthday cake was just a prop. Nice if it's there, irrelevant if it's not. But to me, it was a small piece of tenderness, something I had dared to ask for after decades of being overlooked. Harold's promise was as weightless as the air it floated on, spoken easily, dismissed just as quickly. Lauren's so-called devotion only existed when the camera was rolling. Their version of love only applied when I played the part they had written for me. I looked around the table at all those familiar yet distant faces and felt a wave of nausea rise inside me. I stood up, pushing my chair back gently but firmly, straightening my spine as I prepared to walk away. Harold grabbed my wrist suddenly, his voice turning sharp. Where do you think you're going? Just because I said a few things, you're walking away? Sylvia, have you completely lost your mind? His grip was stronger than I expected. And in that moment I remembered the man he used to be. Back when he ran his office like a king, barking orders, used to being in control. Now the only person he still tries to dominate is me. I yanked my arm free and stared him down, my voice as cold and cutting as a blade. Today isn't even my birthday. If you want to film something or celebrate someone else's special day, go right ahead. Then I turned to Lauren, my tone steady but edged with quiet fury. Do you even know what I like to eat? You've never even asked. Lauren's face went stiff. Her lips parted slightly but no words came out. She'd assumed I would go along with it, like I always did. I was the easy mother, the one who never made waves, who played along to keep the peace. But not this time. This time I was done playing. Their patience wore thin the moment I stopped playing along with their carefully staged performance. The masks on their faces shattered completely. Lauren was the first to explode, her voice sharp and scolding, like she was reprimanding a petulant child. Mom, can you stop being so unreasonable? This shoot is important to me. My subscribers have been waiting for this video. Why are you making a scene now? Daniel quickly chimed in. Yeah, Lauren's been planning this project for weeks. Sylvia, can't you just go along with it? It's only a few minutes and now you've ruined the whole atmosphere. Before I could respond, Harold's expression darkened. He pointed at me, his voice thick with irritation. Why can't you be more like Ruby? She's so considerate, never makes a fuss. Not like you, just getting more difficult with age. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising in anger. Could you, for once, think about Lauren? She's working non-stop and still took time to come home and cook for you. Instead of being grateful, you nitpick everything? You can't help, fine. But do you have to stir up drama in your own house? Do you really think this is how a good mother behaves? By then Lauren had completely dropped the sweet daughter act. Her face twisted in frustration and her voice stabbed at me like needles. Mom, do you even realize how cruel you sounded just now? Aunt Ruby's always been good to us and you sit here insulting her? That's just mean. She paused, eyes sweeping over me from head to toe. Then her lips curled into a mocking smirk. You knew I'd be filming today and you couldn't even bother to dress decently? The way you look right now, people will think we're neglecting you. I stared at her, unmoving. Inside I felt nothing, just an eerie stillness like a lake gone dead in the winter. But she wasn't done. You're always throwing shade at Aunt Ruby, always sulking. Maybe if you spent less time sneering and more time learning how to be a graceful woman, things would be different. Noah, now cowering in the corner of the couch, nervously piped up, I don't like Grandma anymore. Grandma Ruby never yells like Sylvia Grandma. I froze. That scene dragged me straight back in time. Decades ago when Lauren was just a little girl and Ruby had reappeared in our lives. One afternoon, Lauren had refused to let me do her hair, running instead to cling to Ruby's leg, pouting, Bad mommy. I hate you. I want Aunt Ruby to be my mommy. She's pretty and sweet, way better than you. Back then I'd brushed it off as a child's thoughtless remark. But here we are all these years later, and she's still standing by Ruby's side. Even my grandson has been turned. Ruby, this woman who has always haunted the shadowy edges of my marriage, never needed to fight for anything. She simply embedded herself, quietly unraveling everything I built. She never raised her voice, yet she managed to win over Harold's generosity, Lauren's affection, and everyone else's sympathy. And somehow I was the one painted as difficult, bitter, cold. But now I see it clearly, maybe for the first time. The problem was never me. It was that they never truly saw me as family. Images flashed through my mind in a cruel montage. Harold's birthday, dining at the most expensive restaurant in town, sipping fine wine, cutting into prime steak and lobster. My birthday, a staged meal in the kitchen, dressed up to look warm but empty at the core. Lauren's wedding, I planned everything by hand, ran myself ragged making sure it was perfect. Yet in her speech the person she thanked most was Ruby. When I suggested buying a practical fabric couch for the house, they called it a waste of money. But when Harold gifted Ruby an entire dining set, he didn't hesitate for a second. All these memories pierced me like shards of glass, piecing together a bitter truth. I was never more than a background prop in their lives. Expected to give, to serve, to be silent. Never to be cherished. I looked down at my wrinkled hands, but strangely I felt calm, lighter than I had in years. I finally knew, I didn't want to live like this anymore. I lifted my head and let my gaze drift slowly over each familiar yet foreign face, finally settling on Harold. His features were still sharp, but his expression was void of warmth, just a hollow, exhausting kind of indifference. He was once the man I loved with everything I had. Now he was nothing but a stranger who drained every last ounce of energy from me. I took a deep breath, my voice steady, crisp, and resolute. Harold, I want a divorce. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the living room's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting scattered shadows across the floor. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound being the steady tick of the old wall clock, each second clicking by like a countdown to something inevitable. The air felt thick, heavy with tension, like the hush before a storm. I stood in the middle of the living room facing Harold and Lauren, both seated across from me. Their expressions were hard to read, some mix of scrutiny, confusion, disbelief. But for once I didn't flinch. Harold, I said calmly, I want a divorce. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt a strange sense of release, an unfamiliar lightness, as if I'd finally shed the weight of a 40-year chain I'd been dragging behind me. There was a faint pang of sorrow, but it wasn't regret for the marriage. It was a quiet farewell to the silent sacrifices I had made all those years. Harold's face froze. Lauren's eyes widened like I'd just cracked a cruel joke. Seconds later, their shock twisted into mockery. The curve of their mouths sliced across my face like knives. You've lost your mind, Harold scoffed, the disdain in his voice unmistakable. All this over a damn cake? Sylvia, you're not 18 anymore. Stop being so dramatic. Lauren finally snapped out of it, her brow furrowed, her tone sharp and impatient. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Divorce, at your age? How am I supposed to explain this to my followers? I already teased this episode. What do you want me to do now? I looked at the faint smirks tugging at the corners of their mouths and something inside me shattered. They didn't believe I would really leave. They thought this was just another outburst, like all the others over the years. That I'd grumble, argue, and then fall back into place. Back to being the compliant wife, the agreeable mother, the backdrop they could rely on. But not this time. This time I wasn't backing down. I took a deep breath and turned toward the bedroom. Inside the closet, buried in a dusty corner, was an old folder I hadn't touched in years. I had stumbled upon it one afternoon while cleaning the study. Harold had been out and I assumed it was just old bills or tax documents. But when I flipped it open, it wasn't paperwork at all. It was a cookbook. A thick handwritten collection of dessert recipes, neatly organized with meticulous notes. Ruby likes creme caramel. Keep the sugar level moderate. Ruby prefers light cheesecake, smoother texture than traditional New York style. Ruby enjoys tiramisu. Cut the coffee liqueur in half. Page after page, every note was about her. Every line tailored to her tastes. That was why Harold had taken those baking classes all those years ago. Why he'd obsessed over pastry techniques. Not for me. Not for this family. For Ruby. Me. In 40 years he never once asked what I liked to eat. Not once did he step into the kitchen to prepare a single dessert just for me. I walked back into the living room and placed the recipe book on the coffee table, my gaze steady and cold. You thought you hid it well, I said quietly. But the truth always finds its way out. Harold's face changed instantly. Lauren stared at the book, stunned. It was clearly the first time she'd ever seen it. Harold opened his mouth as if to explain. But I no longer cared what he had to say. I turned and returned to the bedroom, opened a suitcase and began packing. Carefully folding my clothes, placing each item deliberately. I was packing not just belongings, but 4 decades of disappointment and exhaustion. Each book, each photo, each keepsake I'd once poured love into, now felt like a burden pressing against my chest. I no longer wanted them. I no longer needed them. I zipped the suitcase shut and stood up, taking one last look around this house. From newlyweds to parents, from laughter to silence, this house held countless memories. But now I didn't want to take any of it with me. I grabbed the suitcase and walked toward the front door, not bothering to look back. Behind me I heard Lauren shout, "Mom, are you really leaving?" Harold's voice followed, tinged with panic. "Sylvia, don't be impulsive. You're too old for this. Where would you even go?" I stopped. Turned around. My eyes cut right through them, my voice calm and crystal clear. "Where will I go? I'm going to live my own life." And with that I turned the knob and walked out the door. I returned to my mother's old house. The moment I stepped inside, the scent of aged wood greeted me, familiar, grounding. The place wasn't big, but it was quiet, steady. It felt safer, warmer than the grand house I'd spent 40 years in. There were no luxury furnishings here, no staged smiles, no one I needed to tiptoe around. This finally was mine. My refuge. My peace. When I returned to my mother's old house, I felt utterly drained, like something inside me had been hollowed out. I was so exhausted I could barely lift my feet. The house had been vacant for years, and the air carried a faint musty smell. I used to imagine this place would one day be my peaceful retreat in old age. I never thought I'd come back because my marriage had collapsed. Pushing through the fatigue, I unpacked my suitcase and spent the entire afternoon cleaning. Mopping the floors, scrubbing the windows, wiping down every corner, until every speck of dust was gone and a subtle warmth returned to the space. Only then did I finally collapse onto the bed and fall into a deep sleep. When I woke again, sunlight was slanting gently across the room. The house, familiar yet strange, sat in complete silence. Outside, light and shadow danced on the window pane, casting a soft glow onto a worn photo frame on the table. I stared at the faded picture inside, a wave of emotion swelling quietly in my chest. 40 years ago my marriage looked nothing like this. Back then Harold was a vibrant young man, full of ambition. Our meeting had been touched with romance and promise. I remember it clearly. A warm spring afternoon, a blind date arranged by mutual friends at a quaint downtown cafe. He wore a crisp suit, smiled with quiet confidence and spoke with charm and courtesy. He told me about his career plans, painted vivid pictures of a beautiful future, and promised to give his wife the most secure and joyful life imaginable. And I had believed him, wholeheartedly. In those early years we did have warmth. Life wasn't extravagant, but we cooked together, watched old movies, took long walks in the park. When Lauren was born, our little family felt even more complete. Harold, in those days, was a good husband. A good father. He'd take me out for steak on my birthday, stay up all night at Lauren's bedside when she was sick, surprise me with a late-night movie when I was worn out from chores. In those moments, I truly thought he was someone I could build a life with. But things began to change the moment Ruby returned. Ruby, Harold's first love. The one who slipped away in his youth. She reappeared in our lives with a delicate sadness, a voice laced with longing. She spoke of her failed marriage, her loneliness, and the regret of a love that never got its fair chance. "She loved me so much back then," Harold once said, almost in a whisper as he sat in the study one night, his eyes filled with a tenderness that had nothing to do with me. We were torn apart by circumstance. At first he only mentioned her occasionally. Then came the late nights, the excuses, working overtime, business dinners. Until one evening on our wedding anniversary he suddenly put down his fork, grabbed his coat and said, "Ruby's car broke down. I need to go help her." I sat there alone, staring at the flickering candlelight, the cold steak on my plate, and a bitter realization settled in. Something in our marriage had shifted. From that night on, Ruby quietly took my place. Harold began mentioning her more often. Then came the discreet bank transfers. He started experimenting with desserts she liked, studying recipes, enrolling in baking classes, earning a pastry chef certification. Not for me, not for our home, but for her. Me. After 40 years of marriage, I couldn't even get a birthday cake. I once confronted him, asking, "What am I to you, Harold?" His answer never changed: "Sylvia, don't be selfish. Ruby's been through so much. I'm just trying to make up for it." Make up for it? And what about me? 40 years spent in every inch of this house, from the kitchen to the living room. My time, my patience, my care. Was none of that worth anything? What cut deeper was how Lauren began gravitating toward Ruby. She admired her makeup, copied her perfume, and would coldly say things like, "Mom, why can't you be more like Aunt Ruby? She's always graceful and sweet. Not constantly nagging like you." That moment stripped me of whatever pride I had left. It felt like being declared obsolete in my own home by my own daughter. In their eyes, I wasn't even worth as much as an outsider. I closed my eyes, trying to push the memories away. Maybe leaving them today was my long overdue awakening. But at least I had finally made a choice. Just then a knock sounded at the door, breaking the stillness of the room. I had just finished folding the bedsheets and was heading to the kitchen to boil a kettle of water when the doorbell rang. My heart clenched instantly, a heavy, sinking feeling telling me whoever was on the other side of that door wasn't someone I wanted to see. I set down the mug in my hand, took a deep breath, and walked to the door. Just as I'd feared, standing on the other side was Harold. And next to him, unmistakably, Ruby. Harold wore his usual look of smug indifference, as if my dramatic escape was just some childish tantrum to be brushed aside. Ruby, with her ever-perfect expression of delicate sympathy, kept her eyes downcast, playing the innocent victim, as if this failed marriage had been my own doing, not the result of their joint betrayal. The moment I saw them, my stomach twisted, nausea rising to my throat. I took a deep breath, forced myself to stand tall, fingers gripping the doorframe to anchor my composure. Harold spoke first, in that same patronizing tone he always used when he thought he was being reasonable. "All right, that's enough. Come on, pack your things. Let's go home. Lauren's video isn't even finished yet. Do you have to tear the whole family apart over this?" His words exploded into the room, but the weight they once carried no longer had any hold over me. That old instinct to shrink, to obey, it was gone. I leaned against the doorframe, my voice steady and clear. "I've already filed for divorce." His face dropped. Ruby's expression stiffened, the soft curve of her lips faltering just slightly. At my age, filing for divorce wasn't a reckless whim. I had spoken to an attorney weeks ago, done my research, understood exactly what I was entitled to: property, pension, Social Security benefits. Just earlier today, I submitted the paperwork online and instructed my lawyer to serve Harold with formal notice. "You've lost your mind," Harold snapped, his brows drawn tight in disbelief. "You're 68, Sylvia. What do you think you're going to start over with?" Ruby quickly stepped forward, voice soft, eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Sylvia, please, don't do something you'll regret. Don't let this be about me. I never meant to come between you two. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Oh, drop the act. Now that I'm out of the picture, you don't have to sneak around anymore. You can finally move in together, eat his desserts in peace. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Harold's face turned dark. His voice dropped low, tight with barely restrained fury. Let's not forget. The house, even the one you're standing in right now, is still marital property. You want a divorce? Then we'll need to sit down and talk it through. Of course, I said calmly. My lawyer's already prepared a draft. We'll split everything 50-50, legally, transparently, fairly. He froze. For a man so used to control, to calling every shot, the idea of me asserting my voice, my will, left him momentarily speechless. He let out a bitter laugh. You're really going to go through with this? I looked him dead in the eye. More certain than I've ever been. He was silent for a moment. The anger in his face slowly gave way to a calculated softness, a false gentleness he probably thought could win me back. His voice lowered. Can't we just sit down and talk this through? I stared at him. This man I had once loved, now standing on my doorstep like a stranger with a familiar face, stirring nothing in me but a quiet resolve. No, I said, my voice calm and final. My lawyer will be in touch. And then I closed the door. The soft click of the lock echoed like a full stop at the end of a long sentence. Sunlight still filtered through the windows, but the air inside the house felt cleaner, no longer tainted by Harold's sharp cologne or Ruby's cloying perfume. The silence returned, this time a welcome kind of peace, not a heavy void. This marriage was finally nearing its end. I leaned against the door and closed my eyes, letting myself breathe in the quiet. I should have taken this step long ago, but I had finally taken it now, and that was enough. And I knew this was only the beginning. There was a life waiting to be rebuilt, a rhythm to rediscover. I'd need work, purpose, something of my own. Maybe it was time to visit the local community center, see if they were hiring for any crafting programs. Grace suddenly came to mind, a gentle, warm woman who once cared for my mother during her final days. She was soft-spoken, meticulous, and loved crochet and quilting. We chatted a few times. She'd mentioned volunteering at a craft co-op downtown, even suggested that someone with my skills could easily find work there. Maybe it was time to give her a call. The first thing I did after finalizing the divorce was schedule a full medical checkup. When I held that health report in my hands, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The tension that had clutched my chest for so long finally eased. My body was mine again, and my health, my future, was finally back in my own hands. I told myself, this is where my life truly begins again. Not long after, I sold my mother's old house. It had once been the place I imagined growing old in, but it had already served its purpose. With the proceeds, I purchased a modest 2-bedroom condo in a quiet neighborhood called Fountain Hill Estates in the neighboring town. The apartment wasn't large, but it was bright and sunny with views of fountains and tall trees. For the first time in decades, life felt calm, structured, peaceful. After moving in, I began carefully building my new routine, one detail at a time. I visited the local hiring center to find someone who could help around the house and eventually met a young woman named Lila. From the moment we spoke, I liked her. She was sharp, cheerful, and efficient, always knowing the right thing to say without being overbearing. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She felt more like a thoughtful companion who happened to lend a hand when I needed one. And I finally returned to something I had once loved deeply in my youth: crochet and quilting. I joined the community center's craft workshops, just to ease myself back into the rhythm. But after the very first class, people began gathering around me, asking if I'd be willing to teach. Their enthusiasm took me by surprise. It was there that I ran into Grace again. She volunteered at the community center as a coordinator for the arts and crafts programs. We hadn't seen each other in years, but she was just as graceful and composed as I remembered, warm, steady, quietly competent. We caught up, reminiscing about the old days. She said she'd never forgotten the way my hands wove warmth into every piece of fabric. You should be teaching, she said, gently patting my hand. Not just for others, but maybe it's time you found a new path for yourself. With her encouragement, I began offering regular crochet and quilting classes at the community center. Then I started selling my handmade pieces, scarves, pillows, woven wall hangings at the local market. I thought it would be small, a simple hobby. But the response was overwhelming. People weren't just drawn to the products, they were drawn to the feeling behind them. The warmth of handmade things. The quiet story in each stitch. Grace became my true partner. She had a knack for logistics and business. She helped design our logo, set up an online shop, and suggested we share our work and our story on social media. Together, we registered a small creative studio, Knots and Threads, a boutique brand dedicated to fiber arts and hand-sewn beauty. We launched a weekly online series, our Craft Circle, where we filmed tutorials, shared tips, and talked about life, growth, and healing. Slowly, our audience grew, a steady, loyal group, mostly women around my age. They sent messages saying they saw themselves in our stories, that our hands-on creativity had rekindled something they thought they'd lost. This wasn't some grand empire. Didn't need to be. It was something that fed my spirit, something that made me feel useful and fulfilled again. This life, quiet, simple, honest, felt richer and more freeing than anything I'd known before. Later, after saving enough, I finally treated myself to a full set of dental implants. That day when I walked out of the clinic, I went straight to the little diner on the corner and ordered a fried chicken platter and a warm walnut brownie. Every bite was crisp, rich, and deeply satisfying. It wasn't just my teeth that had regained strength. It felt as though I'd taken back control of my life. My days began to settle into a new, steady rhythm. In just a few years, my life had transformed in ways I never imagined. What started as teaching crochet and quilting classes at the community center grew into a full-fledged venture with Grace through our brand, Knots and Threads. Our handmade pieces began to develop a loyal following. At first, we sold small batches of scarves and quilts at weekend markets. But soon we were taking custom orders, participating in artisan fairs, and even receiving invitations to regional craft expos. Grace handled brand management and promotional outreach, while I focused on content creation and teaching. Every week we filmed a short tutorial video, sharing techniques, fabric tips, bits of our everyday lives, and my journey of starting a business at 68. The audience's response surprised me. Women my age wrote to say our stories rekindled their passion for life. Younger viewers called our slow-paced crafting aesthetic soothing and authentic, a rare kind of comfort in their fast-moving world. Even Lila, my household assistant, became one of our biggest fans. She eventually joined our small team, taking charge of video production and social media content. One day, she made a suggestion that would change everything. You should try live streaming. Talk to your audience in real time. I bet they'd love it. At first I hesitated. I worried I was too old, too awkward in front of the camera. But with Grace and Lila's gentle encouragement, I gave it a shot. To my surprise, the response was overwhelming. People tuned in just to watch me stitch and chat, asking questions, sharing their stories, listening as I talked about the meaning behind each fabric pattern and the life that inspired it. Knots and Threads became a well-known Silver Age entrepreneurial brand in our town. We were even awarded a community education grant to launch a new program, Crafting a New Chapter, a workshop series designed to help retired women learn handcrafts and explore second career possibilities. Women like me, who once felt invisible, began to rediscover their purpose, confidence, and creativity. And I finally had something that was entirely my own, a life's work that belonged to no one else. Not a husband, not a family name, not a role I was expected to play. Lila worked by my side with her endless energy, and Grace remained my most trusted partner. Together we built something real, not because we were needed but because we were truly seen. I had thought by this stage in life, I'd found all the peace and freedom I needed. I believed the voices from my past had finally faded into silence. But life, it seems, always has its own ideas. And the next turn of fate was already quietly waiting. 3 years after the divorce, on a quiet weekend afternoon, I had just finished a live stream and was preparing to brew a pot of black tea when the doorbell rang. I assumed Lila had forgotten her keys. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Lauren. She looked nothing like the woman I remembered. Her once long flowing hair had been chopped into a blunt cut. Her face was drawn, her complexion sallow, her eyes dull with exhaustion. That confident, headstrong presence she used to carry had completely vanished. She stepped inside and immediately collapsed onto the couch, her voice hoarse and trembling. "Mom, I can't do this anymore." Before I could say a word, Lauren suddenly broke down. Her sobs were raw and jagged, tearing through the room like glass shattering on tile. "Mom, please come back. This family is nothing without you." Ruby's a fraud. She's a gambling addict. That story about her son studying abroad, it was all a lie. He cut ties with her years ago and moved across the country. We were wrong. So wrong. We were selfish. I'm sorry. I just want things to go back, just us, the three of us, starting over. As she cried, the truth unraveled. After I left, Harold had wasted no time inviting Ruby to move into the house. At first, everything seemed to fall into place. Quiet dinners, cozy conversations, the illusion of a long-lost soulmate returning to heal what I had supposedly broken. But it didn't last. Ruby, it turned out, was nothing like the elegant, gentle woman she had pretended to be. She was idle and impulsive, her spending lavish and constant. Endless credit card swipes, extravagant purchases, indulgent shopping trips. Harold had convinced himself she simply wanted to enjoy life after years of hardship. But then the bills began to pour in like a flood. Ruby started meddling in Harold's finances, pressuring him to merge their accounts and even encouraging him to dip into his retirement savings to invest in shady opportunities her so-called friends had recommended. She persuaded Lauren to sell one of her rental properties, insisting families should live comfortably together. And then things got darker. Ruby's moods became unpredictable, cooing one minute, throwing things the next. One night, drunk and slurring, she turned to Lauren and sneered, "Your mother never deserved to marry Harold in the first place." The tension escalated rapidly. Eventually, Lauren discovered the truth. The mythical son abroad didn't exist. Ruby had no stable background, no financial savvy. Her credit card debt was nearing the limit, and worse, she had taken out loans under Harold's name. Only then did Harold realize the woman he had clung to, the dream, the memory, the fantasy, was nothing more than a carefully packaged lie. But it was too late. His financial life was already in shambles. A dividend payment from his company was frozen due to the debt guarantees he had unknowingly co-signed with Ruby. Even worse, the bank had filed legal claims against him for defaulted loans under both their names. And then came the collapse. The stress took a toll on Harold's health. He suffered a sudden heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. After his release, he was confined to a wheelchair, unable to manage even the simplest tasks without help. And Ruby? She vanished. No goodbye, no apology, just a trail of unpaid bills and the ruins she left behind. The man who once controlled everything, who believed he could manipulate life to his will, had finally been forced to reckon with the bitter consequences of the choices he made. His fall was as complete as it was inevitable. In the end, I let Lauren in. She sank into the couch, her voice hoarse and barely holding together. "Mom, I really can't do this anymore." I sat quietly watching her, saying nothing. She rubbed her forehead as if the act alone could ease the weight she was carrying. "My channel collapsed," she murmured. "People stopped buying into my content. They said my life felt fake, that everything was curated. Most of my followers left. Brand deals disappeared, sponsorships pulled out. I tried to pivot, but I have no idea what I'm doing. I keep trying to hold on to something, anything, but the harder I try, the deeper I sink. It's like drowning in mud." She paused, eyes reddening. "Mike and I got divorced too. He said I was unstable, that everything in my life was a mess. Now I'm raising Noah alone and I'm barely holding it together." There was no anger left in my eyes, only a quiet, complicated calm. She looked down again. "Dad's not doing well either. He's practically bedridden now. Refuses treatment. Most days he's just rambling nonsense. But he keeps saying his last wish is to see you one more time." I didn't respond. I didn't agree and I didn't refuse. I simply poured her a glass of water and handed it to her, then gently asked her to leave once she'd finished it. That night I sat with my thoughts for a long time. Not because there was love left. Not because I hoped for closure or reconciliation. But because I knew, if I didn't face the past head-on, I would never truly be free of it. Eventually I went to the hospital. Standing at the doorway of the hospital room, I saw the man who had once commanded boardrooms and controlled every corner of our lives. Now frail, sunken into his bed, his gaze unfocused, his voice a whisper. When his eyes met mine, something flickered. Recognition, regret, or maybe just a fading remnant of what used to be. "Sylvia," he said, lips trembling, breath shallow. "Thank you for coming. I'm sorry. I regret it all." I said nothing. I stood there looking at him for a while. Then he asked, barely audible, "If I'd brought you that cake that day, Would things have turned out differently? I shook my head gently, because he already knew the answer. I turned and walked out of the room. I didn't look back. Outside, the sunlight was soft and golden. The scent of early summer grass lingered in the air. And for the first time in a long time I felt light, unburdened. Harold's ending didn't bring me the thrill of revenge. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, just clarity. He was simply paying the price for the choices he made long ago. The cost of taking everything for granted, his finances, his health, his so-called companion, was steep. And ironically, those were the very things he once thought I lacked, the very things I now held in abundance. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to strike back. I simply left him behind where he belonged, in the past. Lauren still brings Noah to visit from time to time. There are no more dramatic pleas, no attempts to repair what's long gone. We coexist quietly. She no longer tries to fix the past, and I no longer expect her to become someone she's not. I still spend my days teaching, crafting, sharing stories through my channel, selling my work, meeting new people. Lila recently suggested we take a trip up north next year to attend a handmade arts festival. I said yes. Who says old age is meant to be spent in kitchens and on couches? I still want to see more, go further, live deeper. The past isn't worth longing for. The future is what deserves my devotion. It wasn't until the second half of my life that I finally became who I truly am.